I've got every lie right here, you cheating witch!
I'm Michael, 34, was married to Jessica for 4.5 years. Throughout our entire relationship, Jessica constantly portrayed herself as this incredibly devoted granddaughter to her elderly grandmother, Helen. She would go on and on about how Helen was rapidly declining mentally, becoming more confused and forgetful by the day. Jessica would dramatically tell me things like, "Poor grandma asked me what year it was 3 times during our phone call," or "She's getting so bad she can barely remember to take her heart medication," or "I'm terrified she's going to hurt herself living alone, but she's too proud to admit she needs help." Looking back now, I realize this was all part of Jessica's master manipulation. But at the time, I genuinely felt sorry for Helen and deeply admired Jessica for being such a patient, caring granddaughter. I thought it showed what a compassionate person she was. I even helped Jessica handle various aspects of Helen's supposed care, driving them to doctor appointments, helping set up automatic bill payments because Helen was allegedly too confused to manage her own finances, even researching assisted living facilities because Jessica claimed Helen was becoming too dangerous to live independently. Here's where I completely screwed up my own life through blind trust. I never once questioned any of Jessica's stories about Helen's condition. Why would someone lie about their grandmother's mental health? It seemed so specific and ongoing that it never occurred to me to doubt it. I took every single word as absolute truth because I'm apparently a complete moron when it comes to detecting pathological liars. Jessica had been acting increasingly strange and secretive for about 2 months before Thanksgiving. She was constantly glued to her phone, getting defensive and snappy when I asked innocent questions about her day, working late way more frequently than usual. And she kept mentioning this big work project she was collaborating on with her former colleague Ryan that supposedly required tons of evening meetings and weekend sessions. She claimed they were developing some new marketing strategy that was super time sensitive and confidential. I trusted her completely because I'm an idiot who believed my wife of 4 years wouldn't lie to my face repeatedly. She seemed stressed about this work situation, so I tried to be supportive, handling more of the household responsibilities and giving her space to focus on her supposed career advancement. So Thanksgiving morning arrives, and I'm fully expecting our traditional family gathering. Jessica's parents always came over, along with her younger brother and his wife, maybe a few cousins. I'd taken Thursday and Friday off work specifically for the holiday, spent money on groceries for a big meal, cleaned the entire house, was mentally prepared to play host and help cook all day. I was actually looking forward to it because Jessica had seemed so stressed lately, and I thought a nice family holiday would help her relax. Instead, I walk into our house around noon, expecting to find people already arriving, or at least Jessica starting food preparations, and there's complete dead silence. The house feels abandoned, except for Helen sitting calmly in our living room recliner, reading a book and looking totally alert and composed. Not the confused, frail woman Jessica always described, who supposedly couldn't remember conversations from 5 minutes ago. On our kitchen counter, perfectly positioned where I couldn't miss it, there's a folded piece of paper with my name written across the top, in Jessica's distinctive handwriting. My stomach immediately dropped into my shoes before I even opened it because I knew instinctively that whatever was inside was going to be bad news. The note read, "Gone to the city with Ryan to catch up on old times and discuss some personal business that's been years in the making. Figured it was finally time you experienced real hands-on caregiving instead of just watching from the sidelines and making suggestions. Helen is completely your responsibility for the entire weekend. Don't panic. Her medication organizer is clearly labeled, and there's plenty of food in the fridge. I'll be back Sunday evening. Try not to mess this up. Love, Jessica." I read that note probably 5 times, feeling like I'd been physically slapped across the face. Jessica had essentially abandoned me with her supposedly severely declining grandmother as some kind of bizarre test or punishment without any advance warning or discussion. She'd manipulated me into clearing my schedule for a family gathering that was never going to happen, then dumped an elderly woman with supposed dementia on me like I was some kind of babysitter. But then, Helen spoke up from the living room in a voice that was crystal clear, articulate, and sharper than a knife. "I was wondering exactly how long it would take you to discover that little message she left you. That single sentence made my entire world start crumbling and rebuilding simultaneously." Helen stood up from that recliner with the grace and stability of someone half her age, walked into our kitchen with purposeful, confident steps, and looked me directly in the eyes. There was no confusion, no frailty, no signs of the mental decline Jessica had been describing for years. Helen moved and spoke like the intelligent, capable woman she clearly was. "We need to have a very serious conversation," Helen said, gesturing for me to sit down at our kitchen table. "And I think you're going to want to be sitting down for what I'm about to tell you." Helen made us both tea with the efficiency and confidence of someone who knew exactly where everything was and how to use it all properly. No confusion about which cabinet held the mugs or how the electric kettle worked. She moved around our kitchen like she'd done it 1,000 times before, which made me start questioning everything Jessica had ever told me about Helen's supposed cognitive problems. Then, Helen sat across from me, looked me straight in the eye, and dropped the first devastating bomb. "Jessica has been systematically lying to you about my mental condition for over 18 months now. I'm not declining, I'm not confused, I don't have dementia or memory problems, and I definitely don't need assistance managing my medications or finances or anything else." I must have looked completely skeptical and confused because Helen immediately disappeared into our guest room and returned with a thick manila folder that looked like it had been meticulously organized for months. Inside were official medical evaluations from 3 different doctors, all dated within the past year, all confirming her complete mental clarity and cognitive health, comprehensive memory tests, psychological evaluations, neurological assessments, the whole 9 yards. Helen had been getting regular medical checkups specifically to document her mental sharpness. But why would Jessica lie about something like that? I asked, still struggling to process what I was hearing. Helen's expression grew darker as she pulled out another stack of documents from the folder. Bank statements, legal papers, printed emails, photocopied forms. Jessica had been making multiple attempts over the past year to gain power of attorney over Helen's financial accounts and medical decisions. She'd tried to convince Helen to sign legal documents while claiming Helen was too mentally compromised to understand what she was agreeing to. But here's the truly diabolical part. Helen had been deliberately playing along with Jessica's charade, pretending to be more confused than she actually was while secretly documenting every single attempt at manipulation. Helen had been running a counterintelligence operation against her own granddaughter. The financial fraud was extensive and calculating. Helen showed me month after month of credit card statements where Jessica had been forging Helen's signature to authorize purchases. Expensive hotel stays, fancy restaurant meals, shopping sprees, spa treatments, even jewelry purchases. All charged to Helen's accounts without permission, all with forged authorization signatures that Helen had been quietly photographing and saving as evidence. Then Helen dropped the nuclear bomb that completely shattered my understanding of my marriage. Ryan wasn't Jessica's work colleague at all. He was her ex-boyfriend from college, and they'd been having a full-blown affair for at least 6 months. Helen had screenshots of their intimate text message conversations, photos they'd posted on social media from their secret dates, hotel receipts for romantic getaways, dinner reservations at expensive restaurants, even receipts for gifts they'd bought each other. This Thanksgiving weekend wasn't some spontaneous work collaboration or innocent catching up between old friends. It was a carefully planned romantic getaway that Jessica had been organizing for weeks, funded entirely by Helen's stolen credit cards, using me as free elderly care so she could spend a long weekend with her lover without any questions. "How do you possibly know all of this?" I managed to ask through my shock and nausea. Helen smiled grimly and pulled out her smartphone, which apparently this supposedly technology-confused elderly woman had been using to conduct a sophisticated investigation. She'd figured out how to recover deleted text messages from Jessica's iPad when Jessica carelessly left it connected to our home Wi-Fi network. She'd learned to take discreet photos of suspicious documents Jessica left lying around. She'd even installed a small hidden camera in her own living room after catching Jessica going through her personal financial papers. But the absolute worst revelation was the family group chat Helen showed me on her phone. Jessica's entire extended family, parents, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, had an active group text conversation where they regularly mocked me behind my back. They called me the temporary husband and Jessica's safe backup option, made jokes about how long I'd stick around before Jessica got bored, criticized my appearance, my job, my personality, even my hobbies. Jessica's mother had written, "Michael's exactly the type of bland, boring guy you marry when all the exciting ones don't work out." Jessica's father called me aggressively mediocre, but financially stable. Her brother speculated about when Jessica would trade up to someone more interesting. And Jessica herself was an active participant in these conversations, calling me reliable but mind-numbingly predictable, and openly discussing her boredom with our marriage. Helen let me scroll through months and months of these conversations. Years of my wife and her entire family treating me like some kind of pathetic placeholder they were all waiting for her to replace with someone better. Every family gathering I'd attended, every holiday I'd celebrated with them, every time I'd tried to be friendly and welcoming, they'd been secretly laughing at me the entire time. "Why are you showing me all of this?" I asked Helen, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed around me. "Because," Helen said with fierce determination, "you deserve so much better than being treated like someone's consolation prize. And because Jessica made a critical tactical error in abandoning you here with me this weekend. She assumed I was too far gone mentally to expose her lies, but she severely underestimated exactly how sharp I still am." Helen had been meticulously planning this revelation for months, waiting for Jessica to make a mistake big enough to justify exposing everything. The Thanksgiving abandonment was perfect. It gave Helen uninterrupted time alone with me to present all her evidence without Jessica being able to interfere or spin the narrative. We spent that entire 3-day weekend together, and it was absolutely nothing like the exhausting caregiving ordeal Jessica had tried to set it up to be. Helen cooked incredible meals without any assistance, told fascinating stories about her youth and career, showed me even more evidence of Jessica's systematic deception, and frankly proved to be more engaging and intelligent company than Jessica had been in months. Helen also revealed how Jessica had been gradually and deliberately isolating me from my own support network over the years. She'd been subtly discouraging me from maintaining friendships, creating drama and conflicts whenever I wanted to visit my family, making me feel guilty for having hobbies and interests that didn't revolve around her needs. She'd been slowly shrinking my world so that she became my primary source of social connection, making me more dependent on her approval and less likely to question her behavior. I'd been so focused on being a good, supportive husband that I hadn't noticed I was systematically disappearing into Jessica's shadow, becoming a supporting character in my own life. Sunday evening arrived, and Jessica came waltzing through our front door with Ryan trailing behind her, both of them laughing and looking relaxed like they just returned from a lovely vacation. The absolute unbelievable audacity of bringing her affair partner into our home. Jessica clearly expected to find me overwhelmed, exhausted, and desperate for her return, so I'd be grateful and wouldn't ask too many questions about her weekend. Instead, she found me sitting calmly at our kitchen table with Helen, completely surrounded by organized stacks of bank statements, legal documents, printed text messages, hotel receipts, medical evaluations, and photographic evidence of her systematic fraud and infidelity. Jessica's face went completely white when she saw the evidence spread across our table. "What the hell is all this?" she stammered, looking back and forth between me and Helen like we'd somehow conspired against her. "This," I said, gesturing to all the documentation, "is the end of your elaborate performance, Jessica. We know everything." Jessica immediately went on the offensive, switching into full manipulation mode. She started crying and claiming that Helen was having some kind of psychological episode, that she was confused and making up wild stories, that I was being cruel and gullible by believing the delusions of an elderly woman with obvious mental health problems. She accused me of taking advantage of Helen's supposed vulnerability and turning her against her own family. But Helen wasn't about to let Jessica continue the charade. She stood up, looked Jessica directly in the eye with complete calm and authority, and said, "I've been documenting your theft, fraud, and lies for 10 months, Jessica. Every forged signature, every stolen dollar, every lie you told about my health, every secret meeting with Ryan. Michael deserves to know exactly who he married." Jessica tried desperately to maintain her story about Helen being confused and unreliable, but the evidence was absolutely overwhelming. Medical clearances from multiple doctors, bank records with timestamps, legal consultations with witnesses, even video recordings Helen had made documenting her mental clarity, and Jessica's attempts at manipulation. Ryan just stood there looking increasingly uncomfortable, probably realizing he'd walked into a much bigger disaster than he'd bargained for when he started sleeping with a married woman. That's when Helen delivered the final devastating blow. She'd already contacted her attorney months ago and completely changed her will, removing Jessica entirely and naming me as her sole beneficiary for her substantial estate. Not because she wanted to hurt Jessica out of spite, but because Jessica had proven herself to be untrustworthy with money, and I was literally the only person in her life who had consistently treated her with genuine respect, dignity, and care. Jessica absolutely lost her mind when she heard about the will change, screaming about manipulation and financial misuse, accusing me of seducing her grandmother for money, claiming I'd brainwashed Helen and coerced her into making these legal changes. Ryan tried to calm Jessica down, but she was completely beyond reason, having a full meltdown in our kitchen. Helen just sat there with perfect composure and told them both, "You're welcome to leave my house now. Please take your lies and your drama with you." They finally left, Jessica sobbing and making threats about legal action, but that was just the beginning of the real nightmare for Jessica's family. Jessica's parents and siblings immediately declared total war against me. They accused me of elder misuse, financial manipulation, and psychological coercion. They claimed I'd systematically brainwashed Helen and exploited her supposed mental decline for financial gain. They hired expensive lawyers and filed multiple lawsuits demanding Helen's will be declared invalid and seeking massive monetary damages for emotional distress and defamation. What Jessica's family didn't anticipate was exactly how thoroughly Helen had prepared for this exact scenario. She had documentation going back almost a year, multiple video testimonials she'd recorded explaining her decision-making process and mental state, regular medical evaluations confirming her cognitive competency, legal consultations with 3 different attorneys, all with professional witnesses present. Helen had built an absolutely bulletproof case for her mental clarity and the validity of her legal decisions. The family's lawsuit was a complete catastrophic disaster from start to finish. Not only did they lose on every single claim, but the judge was clearly disgusted by their attempt to exploit what they thought was an elderly woman's mental decline. The court ordered Jessica's family to pay all my legal fees, which ended up being substantial given how aggressively they'd pursued their false claims. Even worse for them, Jessica's systematic fraud came to light during the legal proceedings. Months of forged documents, stolen money, documented lies, attempted financial coercion of an elderly family member. The court case became a public spectacle when Helen's attorney strategically released portions of the evidence to demonstrate the family's pattern of attempted financial exploitation. The public relations disaster was absolute nuclear devastation for Jessica's family. Jessica's mother got immediately fired from her nonprofit director position when the board discovered she'd been involved in trying to financially exploit an elderly family member. Her father's small accounting firm lost dozens of clients who didn't want any association with the scandal. Jessica's brother got passed over for a promotion at his company due to the negative publicity, but the real eliminating blow was Helen's public video statement. She recorded a detailed 15-minute explanation of everything: Jessica's systematic lies about her health, the extensive financial fraud, the fake and mental decline stories, my complete innocence in the situation, and her reasoning for changing her will. Helen posted this video on multiple social media platforms, and it went absolutely viral within days. The video got millions of views, hundreds of thousands of shares, and was picked up by dozens of news outlets as a human interest story. People were completely fascinated by seeing an elderly woman so eloquently defending herself against family greed while standing up for the one person who'd treated her well. The comments section was absolutely brutal toward Jessica and her family, with thousands of people calling them greedy, manipulative, disgusting, and worse. Stories started pouring in from other people who'd experienced similar family betrayals and financial exploitation. Helen became an accidental internet celebrity and advocate for elderly people defending themselves against exploitative relatives. Meanwhile, Jessica got completely torn apart in the court of public opinion, with people digging up her social media posts and finding evidence that supported Helen's version of events. Jessica tried to fight back with her own social media campaign, posting tearful selfies and claiming she was the real sufferer of manipulation and misuse, but it backfired spectacularly. People saw right through her performance, especially after Helen's video had so thoroughly documented Jessica's pattern of lies and theft. Every attempt Jessica made to defend herself just generated more negative attention and criticism. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Jessica's reputation. Her employer, a marketing firm that prided itself on ethical practices, conducted an internal investigation after clients started asking uncomfortable questions about the scandal. They discovered she'd been padding her expense reports and using company resources for personal projects, which led to her immediate termination. Her professional network evaporated overnight as former colleagues distanced themselves from the controversy. Jessica's social circle completely collapsed. Friends who had once admired her supposed devotion to her grandmother now saw her as someone who had systematically misused an elderly family member for financial gain. Wedding invitations were rescinded, group chats went silent, and longtime friendships ended abruptly as people realized they couldn't trust someone capable of such elaborate deception. The financial consequences were devastating. Between legal fees, court-ordered restitution to Helen for the stolen money, and the loss of her high-paying job, Jessica faced bankruptcy. She had to sell her car, move back in with her parents temporarily, and take a minimum wage retail position while trying to rebuild her destroyed career. Ryan, her affair partner, disappeared from her life the moment the scandal broke public. He blocked her number, deleted his social media accounts, and according to mutual acquaintances, moved to another state to escape the embarrassment. Jessica had sacrificed her marriage and reputation for a man who abandoned her the instant things got complicated. Meanwhile, Helen's lawyer revealed even more damaging details during the settlement negotiations. Jessica had been systematically draining Helen's accounts for over 2 years, not just the months I'd initially thought. She'd stolen nearly $40,000 through forged authorizations, fake medical emergencies, and manipulated loans she never intended to repay. Helen had been tracking every fraudulent transaction, photographing forged documents, and even recording phone conversations where Jessica had tried to pressure her into signing legal papers. The depth of Jessica's betrayal was staggering. She'd been planning to have Helen declared mentally incompetent so she could gain complete control over her grandmother's substantial estate. I moved out of our shared apartment within a week of the confrontation and found a small cottage near the ocean about 90 minutes from the city. The place had weathered cedar shingles, a tiny garden, and windows that faced the water. After years of living in Jessica's carefully curated urban environment, the simplicity felt like breathing fresh air for the first time. Helen decided she wanted to move with me, not because she needed any kind of care or assistance, but because we'd genuinely become close friends during this entire ordeal, and she wanted a fresh start away from her toxic family. She'd lived in the same house for 30 years, surrounded by memories of people who had ultimately betrayed her trust. We ended up buying a modest house together about 2 miles from my cottage, splitting all expenses fairly and creating the healthiest, most honest living situation I'd ever experienced. Helen handles her own medical appointments, manages her own finances, cooks incredible meals that put my bachelor attempts to shame, maintains a vegetable garden, and generally functions as a completely independent adult who happens to be the most engaging company I've ever had. Our daily routine became something I'd never experienced in my marriage: actual companionship. We'd have coffee together every morning, discussing everything from current events to philosophy to Helen's fascinating stories about working as a nurse during the Vietnam War. She'd lived through decades of historical events I'd only read about, and her perspectives on life, relationships, and human nature were incredibly insightful. Helen revealed more about Jessica's childhood during our evening conversations. She'd always been manipulative and entitled, throwing tantrums when she didn't get her way, lying to get out of trouble, and showing little empathy for others. Helen had hoped marriage would mature her, but instead, Jessica had simply become more sophisticated in her manipulation tactics. The irony wasn't lost on either of us that Jessica's abandonment note, intended to punish me with difficult caregiving responsibilities, had actually freed me from a relationship built on lies, while introducing me to genuine friendship with someone who valued honesty and mutual respect. Together, we started a nonprofit organization called True Care that helps connect caregivers who've been abandoned, exploited, or manipulated by their own family members with resources and support. The idea came during one of our evening conversations when Helen mentioned how many people had reached out after her video went viral, sharing their own stories of family betrayal and financial exploitation. The response has been incredible. Donations flowing in from people who connected with Helen's story, volunteer applications from individuals who've experienced similar situations, media coverage of our mission highlighting a problem many families face in silence, and hundreds of people sharing their own stories of family financial misuse and emotional manipulation through our website and social media channels. Helen handles all the public relations and fundraising activities while I manage daily operations, coordinate with other nonprofit organizations, handle the technical aspects of our website and database, and work directly with people seeking help. She's become something of a public speaker and advocate, giving interviews on television shows and podcasts about elder misuse, family financial exploitation, and the importance of maintaining dignity in aging. At 79 years old, Helen is busier and more fulfilled than she's been in decades. She travels to conferences, speaks at community centers, has been featured in several magazine articles about advocacy in later life, and receives hundreds of emails weekly from people thanking her for giving them courage to stand up to their own exploitative family members. Our nonprofit has expanded beyond what either of us initially imagined. We've helped expose 3 other cases of family financial fraud in our first year, connected over 200 caregivers with legal resources and support groups, and raised enough money to fund a scholarship program for nursing students specializing in elder care. The work has been deeply fulfilling in ways I never expected. After years of feeling invisible and undervalued in my marriage, I've found purpose in helping others who've been similarly overlooked and exploited. Helen often says that Jessica's betrayal, as painful as it was, ultimately led both of us toward work that matters more than anything we'd done previously. Jessica still contacts me periodically, usually through text messages that alternate between apologetic and accusatory depending on her mood or circumstances. Sometimes she claims she's sorry and wants to work things out, insisting she's changed and learned from her mistakes. Other times, she blames me for destroying her life and reputation by exposing her lies, accusing me of being vindictive and cruel. Last month, she sent a particularly desperate message saying she was in therapy and had been diagnosed with some kind of personality disorder that supposedly explained her behavior. She wanted me to understand that she was sick rather than evil and hoped we could reconcile now that she was getting professional help. I don't respond to any of her messages because there's absolutely nothing left to discuss. She made calculated decisions over years to lie, steal, cheat, and manipulate multiple people, and now she gets to live with the permanent consequences of those choices. Her supposed mental health diagnosis doesn't erase the damage she caused or create any obligation for me to forgive her. Helen has received even more disturbing communications from other family members trying to guilt her into restoring Jessica's inheritance. Jessica's mother sent a handwritten letter claiming Helen was destroying the family legacy and punishing future generations for Jessica's mistakes. Her father called repeatedly, leaving voicemails about how Helen was being manipulated by me and making decisions she'd regret later. The attempts at emotional manipulation have been so persistent that Helen changed her phone number and installed a security system at our house. Jessica's family has driven by our property several times, apparently hoping to catch Helen alone so they could pressure her into changing her will back. We've had to involve law enforcement twice when they ignored our requests to stop the maltreatment. The ultimate irony that I find absolutely hilarious is that Jessica's original note was specifically designed to teach me about caregiving as some kind of punishment or test. She wanted me to struggle with what she thought would be an overwhelming responsibility, probably hoping I'd fail or complain so she could use it against me later to justify her weekend affair. Instead, that weekend taught me what genuine care and mutual respect actually look like in practice. It's not about sacrifice, suffering, and silence, or doing everything for someone while receiving no appreciation. It's about treating people with dignity, having honest communication, showing up consistently for people who actually value your presence, and building relationships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Helen didn't need someone to manage every aspect of her life or treat her like an invalid. She needed someone to recognize her intelligence, independence, and worth as a human being instead of viewing her as a burden or a source of money to be controlled. And I didn't need someone who saw me as a boring safety net or temporary placeholder. I needed someone who valued me as an equal partner and genuine companion worth spending time with. That Thanksgiving weekend completely destroyed my marriage, but it honestly saved my mental health, my self-respect, and possibly my entire future. I lost a wife who had never really loved or respected me anyway, but gained a true friend who actually sees and appreciates my worth as a person while building something meaningful together. Helen and I have dinner together every single evening, work on our nonprofit during the day, take long walks on the beach discussing everything from philosophy to current events, attend local community events where Helen has become something of a celebrity, and laugh frequently about how Jessica thought she was playing some kind of sophisticated manipulation game when Helen had actually been conducting a master-level strategic operation the entire time. Sometimes, the garbage really does take itself out to the curb voluntarily, and sometimes, a wise, elderly woman with more integrity and intelligence than her entire extended family helps you realize that you deserve so much better than being someone's backup plan, safety net, or emotional punching bag. Jessica's most recent text message to me was, "I hope you're satisfied with destroying my whole life and turning my own grandmother against me." And honestly, for the first time in years, I can say with complete sincerity that I am genuinely happy and satisfied with every single decision I've made since reading that Thanksgiving note. The house we share overlooks the ocean. Our nonprofit is thriving and helping people daily. Helen has found new purpose and respect in her later years, and I wake up every morning in a relationship built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine affection instead of manipulation and exploitation. Life has never been better.